going to drastically change how things are run for the better. Everybody's going to be able to breathe at the end of the day and feel like they're not only giving half of what they could be giving to their patients. You're going to give everything to your patient, and which will be a better patient experience in the long run. I feel we as a team, or three of us as a team, went to a meeting with Dr. Bill, and it was more of myself and another staff member really pushing to implement dental monitoring to our whole staff. We were really excited. We did not stop talking Bill's ear off about it on the whole entire plane ride home and after classes, that this is what we were going to do. We came back, and that Monday we started implementing it in our office before we even had onboarding training with our DM specialist.
That sounds really easy compared to how our practice did. So it was during COVID, and Dr. Berry came and was like, I have this new system. I think I want to implement it. And I was like, okay, sounds great. Didn't hear much about it anymore until we came back from COVID. And then one day he just showed up in the office in our morning huddle and said, okay, so we're going to do dental monitoring. And nobody else had heard about it except me and maybe another person.
Oh, perfect.
And he wanted to start it that day. Oh. So we were like, how do we put a patient in?
Right.
So we had no implementation training off the bat.
Yeah.
And we just kind of figured it out as we went. So it was interesting to have that.
That'd be
just
terrifying.
kind of thrown in, but obviously it's turned out great.
Yeah.
So.
We had a kind of a sneak peek because we did a pilot with them before we started. So we kind of had an idea of what we were doing, but then we were like, we're jumping in with 2 feet.
Yeah, that sounds very nice.
I think I would have probably had a panic attack if I was in your situation.
Yes, but it turned out to be very positive, and didn't take long for the team to get on board and like it and be happy with it. So
did you guys have people come in and do training? Oh, good.
Yes, after we had a sideline conversation about we need help, we did. We had people come in from start to finish, do everything, and then it was very refreshing to have an open mind, especially for the staff. They were showing us things that we obviously didn't pick up on learning ourselves.
Yeah.
So that was great.
Was your whole team behind it, or did it take a lot of time for everybody
There was
to
some
get behind
pushback. There was some pushback because it's new, and of course, not a lot of people like change. But as time went on and they realized this is actually going to be very beneficial for us, it was much easier to understand and see what the benefits were going to be.
Where was like your biggest pinch point and pushback that you got from your office?
The clinic.
The clinic?
Absolutely.
Because ours was our front office.
Really? What at the time, what were they doing?
We were going scheduling on demand right from the get-go. So we had a lot of pushback of not wanting to let the patient sleep without an appointment. And we're like, no, it'll work. I promise. You just have to trust us.
Right. See, we didn't do that. We waited a little bit before we started doing on demand. But
yeah,
now we do that, and they're all seeing the beauty of it.
Yeah. Takes time, but it's amazing.
And it's worth it.
Yeah.
So for our practice, introducing it to the patients, since we had the implementation process, we were more confident in how we presented it to patients. It went really smoothly, and we had a very large positive feedback from our patients right off the bat with compliance and scanning, communication on the dashboard. It was, for us, a positive thing with patients.
I think we had the same thing with our patients. They were super excited to have something new, and we were just delivering it to new patients, so they didn't know any different, and they were like, okay, I'll scan. Some of those kids we weren't explaining the importance of the weekly scans as well as we should have been, so we had some compliance issues, but I think we've now figured out what we need to say to ensure that they do take their scans.
Yes. So I agree with that. We did have the same issue. There were some that were just like, I don't really see the point in this,
Yeah.
but we also were enrolling patients that were current and in braces or aligners already. So those were the ones that were giving a little bit more of a pushback,
Yeah.
not really wanting to see the importance of doing it weekly. But then as they come in and, oh, I have a bracket broken. Well, we already knew because
Right.
we saw it in your scan, so we're going to be able to fix it for you today. Instead of, well, you weren't scanning, we didn't see it, now we have to bring you back because there's not time in the doctor's schedule.
Right.
So they see the benefits.
Were you having to bring patients in if they weren't scanning to like reboot them and get them rescanned again? Or were you just sending messages over and over to get them to
We
scan?
did kind of a mixture. We would communicate with them through the dashboard. And then if we weren't seeing any result from that, we would just give them a call and like, hey, we noticed you weren't scanning. You know, we really need to see your scans every week. The doctors review those. It's going to keep your treatment on track. And then we would have a good response from that. And then just depending on when they were coming in the office, we would also have that one-on-one conversation in the chair.
We had that too. And then we were bringing patients in that weren't scanning and made them scan in office with us. So
Yes.
we knew that they knew what they were supposed to do.
Yes, if we noticed that they had been behind in scanning at their appointment, we would just go ahead and do the scan with them, reset it, get them back on track. That seemed to be beneficial.
I think a lot of our patients really were excited to not have to come in office as much, and that we were taking the role of monitoring their child on a weekly basis, and they weren't having to be the bad guy and be like, where are your aligners? What are you doing? Why aren't you wearing rubber bands? I'm doing it for them.
The parents had a much more positive response to it because where we're from, there are a lot of what people call helicopter parents.
Oh,
that
we have those
are,
too.
Yes, yes. So you understand.
Yes.
But that was the most, like, they were excited. Their face would light up like, oh, I get to see what my child's doing every week. Yes, you can monitor it just like we can. You're going to get the same feedback we're going to get on our end. We're going to know if something's broken, if a wire's out, and so are you.
Right.
And you're going to see that in real time. And they loved it. They also loved the fact that they could communicate through the dashboard, and they're not going to have to spend time on the phone. They can just get back to us whenever they can. Less time they're going to have to be in the office. It was a
Not having
big
to come in
response.
for appointments, I think, was the biggest one for a lot of our families.
Yes.
They're not wanting to miss school.
Yes.
Or can't get out of work. Or it's a teacher, so they can only come at certain times. And we're like, well, we don't really have that time slot. So
Right. After
makes
school's always the busiest.
Yes, or before.
And it's summertime, of course.
Yeah.
It's all the time. But that was important for them to not have to check them out of school or just leave directly after school to bring them in or make them miss first thing in the morning. The parents had the biggest response. As far as the patients go, the patients that are adults, I would say for us, they really enjoyed it more than the 13 to 17-year-olds did. But of course, then you have the ones that are in that age range that are very responsible and on top of it. And their responses were good as well. They're usually the best scanners.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yes.
I think at our practice, my staff and my doctor appreciated it the most. We've drastically changed how we schedule appointments and what our weeks look like. We are a full week, a month without a doctor in the office, but we can do all the appointments as if they were in the office. We now have an associate doctor, so she's there about a week a month, and then Dr. Bill's there the rest of the month. So it's been nice to have a change. We were short-staffed, so it helped with that short staffing and not feeling like we were overwhelmed. We did a comparison, and in a year-to-year comparison, we saw a decrease in 16% of in-office appointments. So it's been amazing to our practice.
That's great. For me, I would say once the team got on board and realized, just like you're saying, having the decrease in a patient load in a day, definitely the staff was overwhelmed with we can actually breathe.
Yes.
Because we're not having to see 130, 150 people a day. We can scale it back because we're able to do this all virtually.
You actually get a lunch and a break, and you get out on time.
And then the doctors appreciate it.
Yes.
Because they're not having to do so much work.
Yes.
However, having the ability to be able to communicate directly and get a response so quickly, and when they know it's someone from the office,
Right.
it turns into a positive because we were able to respond.
Yeah.
And it not be just an automated system. Like, we're actually able to be more personable in the message so that they understand, like, we hear you, we understand what you're saying. So for us, if it's not already positive, just from them asking a simple question, it turns into something positive if it started out negative.
I would agree. We get those negative comments regardless
Right.
of what's happening, but a lot of them will turn positive because it's just a simple question that's bugging them so much. But when you are like, oh, that's okay, like, we can either get you in tomorrow, or nope, that's pretty normal. And they're like, oh, okay. Or you're taking the time out of the day to send a personal message, and they can tell that it's not automated.
Yes, and a lot of time just having a simple explanation is all they're looking for.
Yeah.
Just the reassurance that it is okay.
Yeah.
Or this can wait, or
Yeah, this is
whatever the
normal.
case may be. Yes, sometimes that's all they need. And I'm noticing a pattern with our patients that it's around the holidays
I see that.
that they just tend to take a break.
Yeah.
And then there's no communication of that's something that they want to do.
Or I went out on vacation, I forgot my stuff.
Yes.
Well, that would have been nice to know 3 weeks ago when you went on vacation.
Absolutely. And we have the ability to send mass messages, which we do take advantage of, especially if we're going to be closed or it is going to be a holiday. And how do you guys handle?
I'm messaging these patients weekly, or 3 times a week that are over. So I'm really on top of them on a weekly basis. And then if they're really, really over, I'm personally calling them or texting them to try to figure out what's going on, or if they were sick or if they were out of town. And be like, oh, I just forgot to tell you. We haven't really had a big stall out lately. I was noticing it more around like Christmas and this holidays when people were out of town or people were getting sick. So we had those moments, but I think we've gotten a good procedure down that we're messaging them constantly and ensuring that they're getting those messages and reminders to scan their teeth.
What would you do, or how would you feel if you had to stop monitoring with your office completely?
I think Dr. Bill and I would have a very long sit-down conversation about that's not going to work. I think if we went back to how we were doing all of our appointments and everything before, we would be a very bad spiral, and we would be overwhelmed and completely understaffed, and it would not be a good situation for anybody.
I agree. It's an absolutely not for me.
Yeah.
It's way too beneficial. It's way too important now for our staff and our patients. They understand this is part of their treatment. This is going to help them get in and out of braces or aligners as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't you if that's an option?
If it's at your fingertips, why wouldn't you have it in your practice at all times?
It's a no for us.
Yeah, it's a no for us too. So if you were talking with another staff member from another office later tonight, what would you tell them would be the best benefits and how you would pitch it to their doctor to get them to go all in to DM?
Way less time for patients to be in the office. It's going to cut appointments tremendously if you're using it to its full ability. In my opinion, braces and aligners is you're going to get everything that you're going to need in order to still run your practice efficiently. But seeing that major decrease over just a few months from when we first started to literally 6 months later, seeing a decrease in appointments was enough for me to be like, this was absolutely worth it. And my doctors agreed.
Yeah.
They loved it.
I think I would probably tell them, you have to find your why. You have to figure out why it would be beneficial for your practice and then jump in with 2 feet. You
Yes.
can't just tiptoe in.
No.
You have to jump in and make the conscious effort to implement it into your office. It's going to drastically change how things are run for the better. Everybody's going to be able to breathe at the end of the day and feel like they're not only giving half of what they could be giving to their patients. You're going to give everything to your patient, and which will be a better patient experience in the long run.
Yes, and implementing from start to finish, from the very beginning on that first phone call all the way to the last day that they have to do a scan.
Yeah.
Making sure you're consistent all the way through, even with your office, starting with the front desk, TCs, records,
Yeah, everybody.
assistants, DMC, just everybody being on the same page makes it go so much better.
And everybody has to be super excited about it.
Yes.
And back everything that's happening.
Yes. Communication.
Communication is
Very
definitely key.